Hi, it's John from Android Addicts, and this is an unboxing and review of the Gamesir X3 Type-C. So similar to the X2 on the left here, this is a Type-C controller, but the added bonus on this edition is that it comes with a built-in cooling fan. So I've put some timecodes in the description if you want to skip to any particular part, but we'll start off with the unboxing and then we'll go through and just have a look at the controller, see what it's like, test out the buttons and the analog sticks, and then try some games out. And then also obviously try out the cooler and see exactly how well it works. So this is what you will receive when you purchase one of these, and it's quite a simple sort of box, I guess. You get your carry case here and just a sleeve on top, and you get this nice sort of Gamesir X3 logo on the top here. You have a little tag here to hook onto something, and that's basically it. So on the inside, you are greeted with this little box here, gaming is winning, and obviously the controller itself. In the top here, we do actually get a USB-A to Type-C cable. That's a nice sort of floppy USB cable. It's not a stiff cable, it's very soft. It feels quite nice actually. And we'll have a look at that in a minute. So let's just see what's inside the box here. Okay, so we get our Gamesir sticker, we get a little warranty card, bits and pieces. We get some controller instructions here. There's nothing too exciting on here, but I will just quickly go through, and you can pause if you want to read any of it. And those are all the English instructions there. The most interesting part inside the box is this little set of buttons and thumb pads here. So we'll have a look at these a bit later on. We'll just go through the controller and how that looks first. Okay, so here is the controller in my hand, and initial thoughts are it is obviously a lot heavier than the standard USB-C version, because we do now have this cooler on the back. It's nothing too bad, it's around 270 grams, and you'll see here this big cooler in the center, which is what's going to be doing all the cooling of your phone whilst you're playing. So we have a sort of standard layout here, as you would expect from an Xbox controller or a Nintendo Switch controller. So we have our two analog sticks here, which do have R3 and L3 clickable buttons. We've got our D-pad here, and our four face buttons. We have the start and select buttons on the top. We have a screenshot button, and we have a home button. On the top of the controller itself, we've got the RB and right trigger, and the LB and left trigger. So nothing too exciting there. We've got some status LEDs here, and we've got our USB-C connector, which is obviously bendable here so that we can actually get our phone in. And that's all you get on the controller at the top. At the bottom, we get our power for the cooler, and we get our power to keep our phone charged up whilst in. So the ergonomics of this, as you can see, they feel reasonably okay if you're holding like this. We can compare this to the X2 here, and you can see that they have made a slightly bigger bump in the back, as you can see there, just from the side. So it's a bit chunkier than the previous model. So you can get a bit more grip on there. I wouldn't say it's particularly more comfortable. It feels around the same to me, and I wouldn't find myself having any problems, I don't think, playing with this. It does feel exactly how you'd expect it to feel. If you've used one of the other Gamesir controllers, you'll know what I mean. It feels absolutely fine. It doesn't feel amazing. You're not feeling like you're using a Xbox controller. So obviously with an Xbox controller, your hands really do wrap around at the bottom here, and it's very, very comfortable to use. Now, obviously on a Android controller, you're not going to get that because you've got the fact that you need to have a phone inside here, but it would have been nicer maybe to have a bit more sort of grip on the back, I'd say. But overall, it still feels absolutely fine. It does feel a lot better than the X2. So another nice comparison we can make to the X2 is the type of buttons that they've used in the X3 here. So they're using Kale switches in the X3, and we can compare the sound of the switches side by side. So here is the X2. And here is the X3. So again, X2, an X3. And we also have the same in the D-pad itself. So X2 D-pad, an X3, and we also have the chaos switches in the bumper buttons and the triggers. So initially I wasn't too sure whether I liked the feel of these, but after having played around with various games, I actually prefer them a lot more to the sort of standard buttons you get on the X2. They just feel a lot more responsive, and you just feels a lot more premium, I'd say, in comparison, and the D-pad especially. So if you're a big D-pad person, then you're really going to love this one, as it is a lot nicer feeling than the X2. So that's definitely a win there for the buttons. The analog sticks themselves, they feel the same as they did on the X2. I still prefer the Xbox analog sticks. They don't seem to feel like they move so fast. It's hard to describe, but these feel they almost feel too smooth. There's not enough sort of tension there maybe. And these, I don't know what it is that Microsoft have done with the Xbox controller, but the analog sticks just feel better on an Xbox controller. And they always have done. The X2 have always felt like this. I think this is more how the Nintendo Switch analog sticks feel. So yeah, they're not bad, they're just not as nice as the Xbox controller. Okay, so let's quickly just go through what we have here in our little box. So we've actually got some additional analog sticks here. We've got an additional style of D-pad, and we have our additional thumb pads here. So you can see concave and convex, maybe just about. So we've got a convex one here and a concave one here. I prefer the concave, so I'm going to be putting those on. But let's just have a quick look at how we can swap these out. So as you can see here, we've got left analog stick, and what we can do is just pull with a reasonable amount of force, not too much. It doesn't take too much to pull it off. We can take that off, and we can now swap it over for a taller stick. So you can see here the size comparison. So it just adds a bit of extra height to your controller. And obviously you can mix and match these if you wish. And once it's on, there we go. In fact, maybe that is what is the difference between my preference to the Xbox controller. It's just a slightly taller stick. Let me try that with the right analog stick as well. And I'm going to pop these on. These caps just sort of slide on top. You can push them off whilst playing if you were really pushing hard on your controller, but overall they stay on pretty well through experience. So let's pop the other one on to the left stick as well. Okay, yeah, that is actually feeling, to me personally, a lot better. So I don't know if that's the same height as an Xbox One. It doesn't seem to be, but it just feels a lot better to me than the shorter ones maybe. But yeah, you just got to have a play around really and see what you prefer. At least you have the opportunity to do so. So we're going to stick the shorter ones there for a moment. Now, next up is the D-pad. So you get the standard sort of four-way D-pad here, which does feel really nice and really very clicky here. But we can actually take this off. It does take quite a bit of force, so don't worry too much, it will come off eventually. So you've got the four little posts there that go in place there. I'm going to swap this over for our more radial sort of version of it. And that just pushes on there. And again, if you're into fighting games or old school games that need a D-pad, these D-pads feel really nice. I guess this is more of a fighting game one because you've got the sort of circular D-pad, which is, yeah, they both feel really nice. I do prefer this one though because I'm just used to that style, so I will swap that back out. Okay, so the last thing that you can do on this X3 is actually swap around your A, B, X and Y buttons. So if you're more used to having the Nintendo Switch layout with BA and YX, you'll see here on the left-hand side, maybe just about, there's a little tiny groove in each button. I'll show you when I've got one of them out. And you can basically take these out, like so. You can see there, that little groove. That just lets you get a sort of finger or something in to actually pull it out. You can see they're magnetically attached. So we can actually take all of these out, and then we can pop them in to our Nintendo Switch layout if we wish. And now we're running the Switch layout. Now, it depends on your game, but obviously most games will still recognize this as A and this as B, as that is the default for this controller. Whereas on the X2, it was defaulted to the Nintendo Switch layout. But either way, I'm going to put mine back to my preferred layout here, but it's nice that you do get the option to actually change these around. Okay, so we'll just do a quick test to make sure that these don't just drop out by being hit. I'm pretty sure they're pretty strong. And they're not coming out, so they're in there as solid as rock. Same with the D-pad, it's not going to come out at all, so they're nice, decent sized magnets which still allow you to actually get them out, but aren't going to just pop out by mistake, you know, or by accident. So that is my final layout now, with my slightly taller analog sticks here and with my standard Xbox layout. So this supports phones with a width of 110 to 179 millimeters. So my S22 Ultra here is going to go in no problem whatsoever. And as usual with this style of controller, all you need to do is line it up with your USB port, pop it in, and the fact it can rise up like this because of that flexibility in the USB port itself, you can then just pop it in like so, and your phone is now in place. So the other thing that you can do, because your cameras may get in the way of the cooler, as you can see here, mine are slightly. So what you can do, which is quite nice, is actually move this cooler to the side. So you can move this up and down depending on where your cameras are to make sure that it's not getting, you know, in the way or over covering your cameras. You can pop it exactly where you like on the phone by just sliding it backwards and forwards. So I'm going to keep mine around just under the cameras because I think that's pretty much where the CPU is. So now that is in as solid as a rock and is touching the phone very nicely to be able to do the cooling. You can see there's no gap there at all, and we're not getting in the way of the cameras. So the fact you can move this and slide it around is a really nice ability, because if it was just set in stone, then you're not going to have much luck otherwise. So the charger part here will take a standard USB-C connection, and basically when you can find a charger cable, you can plug it in and keep your phone charging whilst you actually play. So that's a really nice feature. It's not doing fast charging, you can see it's just doing standard charging, but it's good to be able to charge your phone whilst playing. You can see the white light here has come on, showing that it is charging. Now it's not doing fast charging like I say, but the fact you can still charge with this is a really nice feature. Now this doesn't support charging of all models of phone, so you're just gonna have to try it and see. There is a list on their site with a few basic ones. I think pretty much all Samsungs will charge fine with this, and a lot of other brands, but there are obviously some charging specifications or phones with certain specifications that won't charge. So it might be a bit of a trial and error as to whether or not your phone will charge in this. But yeah, I'll put the list on the screen of the known ones, and like I say, all Samsungs are pretty much guaranteed to work. Now what is a slight shame is that the cooler itself does require a separate cable. So if you plug in your USB-C 5 volt 2 amp cable here, the cooler will turn on, which is really nice, but you do need a separate one to the one that's charging your phone, which I think is a bit of a shame. If they could have somehow made it combined, so you've just got one single input, then it would do both, and maybe have a little switch on the back here, kind of like they did with their Snowgon controller here. If you remember the on-off switch that they had on this one, which was a nice little controller. I'll put a link to that one there as well if you wish. But yeah, it's separate power for both, which isn't the end of the world, but it is obviously an extra cable you're going to have to carry around with you. We'll go through the cooling features in a bit more detail later on, but for the time being I just want to go through and test the gamepad itself. So we've got the Gamesir app installed here, and it does come with a gamepad test here. So if we go into here, we can see that there is absolutely no lag at all on this controller. You can just instant reaction because it's obviously a direct connection with USB-C. I haven't found any dead zones here at all. I would normally use the other gamepad testing app, but they've gotten rid of the nice little dead zone type drawing feature, so we're just going to use the Gamesir one here. But as you can see, you can get pretty much anywhere you want, and there's no dead zones that I've actually found anywhere on the controller, so it's really nice to see how quick these respond. D-pad as well, you can see instant reactions, and the same with these new kale switches in the buttons, really nice. And we've got our L3, R3, and our start and select buttons. I'm currently in the Gamesir mode, and if you saw whilst I started up the app, you do get this little tutorial which will tell you how to switch modes when you're using your controller. So basically the two different modes are X input and the sort of Gamesir mapping mode. So X input is the default mode that it comes in, which is compatible with any game that supports a controller, as long as the controller, or the game itself that is, supports X input mode. Now, the reason you go into the Gamesir mode is if you want to map controls on the screen for games that don't support a controller. So that's probably the mode that most people go into. But to switch, you basically just press and hold G and home, and you'll see the green light here changes to blue. So once you're in the X input mode, you'll see here you can sort of move around Android as you would normally with an X input controller, and you can obviously load up whatever game it is you are going to play. But I'm going to stick to the Gamesir mode because I'm just going to show you how you can quickly map some controls. So if we press and hold G and home again, we'll switch back to the Gamesir mode. We've got the green light. So what we can do here, if you add a game into the list here from anything you've got installed, you can then map controls to it and play a game which maybe doesn't have controller support or controller support for the X3. You can now play it on your X3. So let's go into Genshin Impact for an example. Okay then, so here we go. I've already set this up on my controller. As you can see, I've got all the controls showing on the screen, but I'll just show you exactly how you can actually configure it yourself if you do want to be able to do some Genshin Impact and play with the controller. So all you need to do is when you are in your game of choice, you'll see that there's a little floating Gamesir widget here. Once you click on there, it will open up the mapping feature. So you can add buttons. So let's pretend I haven't got the jump button there. Let's remove that. And we'll remove the left analog stick. So what we're going to do is go to add button. And we can see here, we've got a left analog stick that we can place down. So we're going to put that over here. And then we're going to add another button for jump, and I'm going to do the A button. So I'm going to click, drag this question mark over here onto the jump section, and then press A. And that's now set A to be that button. Now our left analog stick is a bit, well, it's kind of in the wrong place a bit. It would work, but I want to just centralize that a bit better. So I'm going to move that down a bit here. You can increase the size as well if you want. So you can get quite big and quite small. So we're going to go up to about there. And then once you've got your layout set exactly how you want, we've got obviously the right analog stick here for looking around. If you press on the X and click save, you see it says saving down here. Just take a moment. Once it's saved, you've got to give it a moment to sort of start working again. There we are, we're back in. Just take a second or two sometimes once you've saved a new config to actually start working. But now you can see that we've got our controls all set up and working nicely for our game, which doesn't currently support a controller on Android. So the other thing we're going to do here, obviously, is just check. This is a good game to test it on. Check exactly how well the cooler is going to work. So currently you can see here in the sort of right hand side, we're running at about 31 degrees. So let's just see exactly how hot we can get this without the cooler running. And then we'll see how much difference, if any, the cooler makes to the phone and its temperature. Okay, so here we have the perfect example. I've been playing this for a few minutes now and the phone has got up to 40 degrees here, as you can see. And on the front of the phone, we're getting a good 40 to 48 degrees all the way around the phone. So it is getting very hot, certainly around this sort of area here. So what we're going to do is now plug in the cooler. I'm just going to see how long it takes to cool the phone down. So we're going to do this in real time, so I'll just continue playing for a bit and we'll just see how quickly it goes. Now, I tried this last night and it went down really quickly to start with. So like I say, we're currently at 40 and it's been in for around 15 seconds so far. So we'll just give it some time. I don't even need to move anymore because I know that this area in the game is pretty strenuous on the CPU. So we're down a couple of degrees already. Now obviously we're also charging at the same time, so this is putting a real good test on the cooler. We're down to 36. But yeah, it works really nice and you can see the mappings work really well. So if you do want to be able to play any game you like, then you can use the built-in Gamesir app, or you can use something like Mantis Gamepad Pro if you don't want the game to detect that you are running a sort of controller on your game. So we see we're already down to 34, so that's -6 degrees already. So I'll just continue playing for a bit. You can see here, well, I'll let you actually hear the noise from the fan. It's 36 decibels. It's pretty loud. I mean, it's, you know, you're not going to not hear that running if it's on in a room. But obviously it's got its fancy RGB lighting there, which changes colour. But yeah, it is quite loud. But obviously we are down to 32 now. So we've gone -8 degrees so far. And it's only been in for just over a minute. So this is definitely going to help you play games such as Genshin Impact or anything that does use a lot of CPU and GPU and keep your phone nice and cool. Now obviously if you've got the game sound on in the background, it definitely make it a lot less harder to hear the fan. I can still hear it though in the background. But the phone, I mean the S22 Ultra here does get very hot anyway. I have got it on auto brightness as well. We're down to 31 now. We can see it's still quite warm on the front at the moment. It's down a bit over here, but obviously where the CPU and GPU is running, it's still quite hot. It's down a couple of degrees on the surface at least. But it's the internal temperature that we're more worried about because we're not actually touching the screen anyway at the moment. So we're down at 31. Let's see how low it can go. I will leave it for a few more minutes now and we'll come back after say 5-10 minutes and see how it's going. Now one thing that would have been nice on this, although it may have looked a bit funny I guess, is the little stand that they had on the Snowgon where you could flip this out and actually prop your phone up whilst the cooler was active. And if you were going away somewhere, you'd know that your phone is sort of cooling still and the fan vent is not being blocked. Sadly, we don't have that on the X3 here. So if we do put this down, you can hear it does block the fan somewhat. So that's a bit of a shame. If we had got a little stand or something that we could have kicked out and just left this to rest. I guess the problem is that we do have 2 USB cables, so it may have been a bit difficult to add that stand in. But yeah, we've gone down 10 degrees. In the testing on their site, they said they managed to get down at least 24 degrees in their test. Now, I don't know what they were testing with. It could have been anything. So we're obviously using a extremely high-end game here for Android at least, and we are charging at the same time. So I'm down to 30 now after about 4 minutes or so. So after 5 minutes, I'll try unplugging the charger and we'll see how much it can get down to with the charger unplugged. Obviously charging your battery does heat up your phone, so that won't be helping things, but I think most people will probably be playing it in this sort of situation, so I thought I'd just test that out first. Okay, so we've left it a few more minutes and it's still running at 30, which is still very good. We're on the higher settings here at 60 FPS, so we're actually doing pretty well, all being considered here. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to go into a standard Android game with X input and we'll just see how the controls fare there. Okay, so we are back in the X input mode as defined by the blue LED there. So I've just gone into Dead Cells here. This is the native Android port. And we'll just go through it and just see exactly how well it functions. As you can see, it's really nice, extremely responsive. So you can see there the controller is really, really responsive, no input lag whatsoever, and it's playing absolutely beautifully. So it's really good to play on. I feel like the buttons, like I said, are really, really responsive, and if you do play a lot of games with D-pads especially, you're going to be in for a treat with the X3. So this does of course also support all the usual streaming apps. As you can see, this is the Xbox Game Pass one, or this is actually the Xbox console streaming, and it works absolutely fine. The only thing I've noticed is that the buttons do appear to be reversed, so I'm not quite sure why that is, but A is B and B is A, etc. So I think that's down to the app itself, not the controller. So the Xbox app itself is seeing it as the incorrect layout, so you can obviously go inside your game and adjust controls as necessary. But yeah, that's working absolutely fine control wise. Other than that, yeah, we can see here that it is definitely button A and B, so the actual Xbox app itself is the thing that's not correct, or not what I would expect it to be anyway. Let's just double check that again. So we're going to go in, and yeah, for some reason it has got the controls around a different way. But yeah, luckily we can, in Elden Ring at least, we can just go in here and set them the other way around. Same with X and Y as well, they have been reversed for some reason. Yeah, it's the whole Xbox app, because you can see here I have to press B to go back and see my different games. So yeah, that's a bit of a shame, that is. I might send a message to them and see if they can actually change that back around, because that's a bit annoying to say the least. So last up, we're going to have a look at EggNS, and yes, it does work with the X3. So let's just load up Cuphead and see how it goes. Okay, so here we are in Cuphead, and you can see we're getting a decent FPS on the S22 Ultra here, but the most important part is whether the controls are any good. And obviously this is made for this controller pretty much, and the X2, so you can be sure that it's absolutely fine, no problems at all. Now it's quite hard to get this game running because of the settings. I don't know whether it's just on the S22 Ultra, but I had some issues getting it to even start up, just getting a black screen. So I will show you the exact setting I've got. But as you can see, it's working absolutely fine. Fantastic speed as well, 60 FPS. So what we'll do, we'll just go into the menu here, and I'll just quickly show you what I've got mine set up to. Got GPU on high, and in the game settings, I've just turned everything off basically. So that is the Gamesir X3, and overall I'm really impressed. I'm a big fan of the cooler built into the controller now, and yes, it's a bit noisy, but the fact we got down by about 12 degrees whilst playing Genshin Impact on the highest settings and 60 FPS is pretty good really. I mean, the S22 Ultra is a bit of a hot phone, the Snapdragon variant anyway, so to see it get down that much was quite a nice surprise. Now obviously it does add a bit of bulk to the controllers, but overall it's, you know, pretty ergonomic, and with the additional ability to swap out your thumbsticks, your D-pad and your face buttons, it's a really great all-rounder. So compare that to the older version on the left there, or the Bluetooth version. I think this is a really good one to go for if you're after a new controller. Now obviously you can see here that I don't have my case on my phone, because you cannot use this with a case installed. Even a very thin case such as this, it's not going to work because your USB-C connector will not reach inside the phone. I've only ever been able to use it with a case on my old, I think it was my Lenovo Legion phone, where the case basically at the bottom pretty much didn't exist. I think there's just a tiny bit here and here just to clip on. So if you have a case like that, then you'll be fine, but any other style of case, no matter how thin it is, you'll find that it won't work. So you do need to take your phone out of its case, sadly. That's just the way it is. But for that, you do obviously get better cooling because you haven't got a case stuck onto the back of here, which will help with the cooling function anyway. So it's not the end of the world, but it is a bit of annoyance, I guess, to most people. So it's just worth bearing that in mind. Overall though, really happy with this, and yeah, I'd happily recommend this over the X2. And the Bluetooth X2 is still decent, and I do have a video comparing the two older versions actually, which I'll link to in the description and in the top right. But yeah, if you're after the latest and greatest with built-in cooling, then this is the one to go for. So I hope you found this video useful. If you have any questions or comments, do leave them down below and I will do my best to answer them. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos coming soon. And again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.